Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Hami and these are the headlines. In Iran, another 208 people have died from the new coronavirus overnight, raising the death toll to over 17,000 with more than 300,000 cases. In Pakistan, the daily COVID-19 cases and deaths have declined as just over 500 infections and 6 fatalities were reported overnight. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has extended its global state of emergency by 3 months as worldwide deaths crossed 685,000 and confirmed cases topped 17.8 million. Kabul says it has released 317 more Taliban prisoners in the past 2 days, bringing the total to 4,917. The Afghan government's National Security Council said the prisoner release will continue until the total approaches 5,100. These prisoners have not been released as per the list the Taliban gave to the government. 18 people have been killed and 11 others wounded in a terrorist attack in the far north of Cameroon. Local media says Boko Haram terrorists threw a grenade at the Nigut Chebe camp for displaced people in Mayo Mascota village. Thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets to demand Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's resignation over corruption and COVID-19 mismanagement. Police clashed with the demonstrators, arresting 12 from a junction near the Premier's residence in Jerusalem. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The World Health Organization has extended its COVID-19 global state of emergency by 3 months as worldwide deaths crossed 684,000 and confirmed cases near 17.8 million. The US has reported over 60,000 cases and 1,051 deaths in the past 24 hours. In Iran, another 208 people have died from the virus overnight, raising the death toll to over 17,000 with more than 300,000 cases. More in this report.
With various vaccines still in the works, the coronavirus pandemic is devastating the Americas, parts of Africa, and South Asia. As the US struggles to slow down the spread, the virus continues to rage across Brazil and Mexico, posting record daily infections. As deaths in Colombia surpass 10,000 with more than 300,000 cases, authorities have reassured that those needing medical aid will get treated.
We are going through a painful moment, of course. There is no collapse, absolutely not. Whoever needs to be hospitalized is able to. Whoever needs intensive care has access to it. People who finally pass away, well, it's a very painful process. It's a difficult mourning process for the families. It's difficult because they have to grieve in absence of the body.
South Africa has surpassed 500,000 confirmed cases, representing more than 50% of all reported infections in the African continent. Over in Europe, Italy's daily infections dipped under 300 after a 3 days high. Greece has confirmed 110 new cases in the past 24 hours, the highest since April. In Australia, the second most populous state of Victoria has declared a state of disaster following a continuous surge in new confirmed cases.
It's not a tap that you can just turn on or off. And they're not decisions that would ever be taken lightly, because there will be significant costs associated with even minor changes to the rules do come with a significant cost. But numbers are too high, and there is a growing case for us to do more.
Meanwhile, in Asia, China has reported 49 new cases in the mainland, up from 45 the day earlier. South Korea has reported 30 new cases, 22 of them imported, while 8 were locally transmitted.
Moreover, India has reported more than 50,000 new cases of the novel coronavirus for the fourth consecutive day. With 54,735 cases in the last 24 hours, the tally has crossed 1.7 million mark. The nationwide death toll has risen to 37,364 after 853 deaths overnight. The state of Maharashtra remains the virus hotspot in the country with over 40,000 confirmed cases and more than 15,000 deaths. Well, a cabinet minister in the government of Uttar Pradesh, Kamal Irani, has died 2 weeks after contracting with the coronavirus. India's Home Minister Amit Shah has also tested positive for the virus. The country has the third highest number of infections and the fourth highest death toll in the world. Meanwhile, the daily new coronavirus cases and deaths have declined in Pakistan to just over 500 infections and 6 fatalities overnight. The Health Ministry said the death toll has reached 5,976 in the country. The ministry said that out of 279,000 cases detected so far, over 248,000 have recovered from the virus. It said there are now over 25,000 active cases in the country, with 1,618 in critical condition. Sindh remains the worst hit province with over 121,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 93,173 cases. In the northern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, there are over 34,000 cases detected so far, while Balochistan recorded over 11,700 cases. Hajj pilgrims in Saudi Arabia have taken part in the third and the final day ritual of the symbolic stoning of the devil. Social distancing measures were strictly followed during the annual ritual, standing apart on yellow markers. The pilgrims were provided with the special disinfected stones for this purpose by the Saudi Hajj management authorities. After the event of the third day, pilgrims will be back to Mecca to pray at the Grand Mosque. A limited number of Saudi pilgrims were allowed to offer Hajj this year due to the pandemic. The death toll from consuming spurious liquor in India's northern Punjab province has risen to 98. Officials said maximum deaths were reported in the Tarn district. The death count in the district alone has reached 42, following other casualties in the cities of Amritsar and Batala. Police have arrested 25 people in connection with the incident. The police said they have conducted more than 100 raids across 3 districts and seized hundreds of liters of liquor. The officials said families are reluctant to record their statements and did not want any action. Moving on, Kabul says it has released 317 more Taliban prisoners in the past 2 days, bringing the total to 4,917. The Afghan government's National Security Council said the prisoner release will continue until the total approaches 5,100. The office of the NSC said the released prisoners are from Parwan and other provincial prisons. On Friday, President Ashraf Ghani said 500 prisoners will be released in the next 4 days, but they are not the prisoners on the Taliban's list. The Taliban say intra-Afghan talks cannot be held unless Kabul releases inmates according to the list. Thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets to demand Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's resignation over corruption and COVID-19 mismanagement. Police clashed with the demonstrators, arresting 12 from a junction near the Premier's residence in Jerusalem. This was the biggest rally to be held in the capital since the recent start of anti-government protests. Israelis say Netanyahu failed to prepare a clear exit strategy after the first lockdown.
Next week we're gonna do this all over again. Doesn't matter a twisted ankle, a broken leg, or a broken head. I'm still gonna come here until Benjamin Netanyahu will go home.
U.S. House of Representatives has passed a $500 million aid package for Israel's missile defense system. The aid will mostly go towards the Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow missile defense systems. While over $47 million will be allocated for anti-tunneling technology, $4 million for the U.S.-Israel collaboration on coronavirus research. The funds allocated are part of a 2016 agreement that pledges $38 billion for Tel Aviv over a decade. The bill will next head to Senate for the final approval. Tensions between Russia and Belarus are flaring over the arrest of 30 people whom the Minsk suspects as Moscow's mercenaries. Russia said the arrested men were the employees of a private security firm who had stayed in Belarus after missing their flight to Istanbul. Belarus state media said President Alexander Lukashenko cast doubt on the Russian version, adding the group had other goals. He said Belarus is open to cooperate with Russia on the issue. Earlier, the authorities said the accused were arrested after information received that over 200 fighters entered the country. In support of the Black Lives Matter movement, protesters have gathered in London's Brixton neighbourhood to demonstrate against racism and police violence. Carrying placards and chanting slogans, the demonstrators marched through the streets of London. Earlier, police imposed a curfew in the South London area to stop protesters from blocking roads. Gathering of over 30 people are still banned in the UK after Britain reeled back on the easing of the coronavirus lockdown. London and other major cities around the world have seen large Black Lives Matter protests following the killing of George Floyd in the US. As the coronavirus shutdowns get extended, the world feels more like a prison. But for two inmates in Oklahoma County Jail, a shutdown is far more appealing than a prison cell. Pablo Daniel Robledo and Jose Bulletin Hernandez attempted a prison break from their cell on the 12th floor using the old-fashioned rope line. The attempt was made early morning using a rope made from bed sheets. But Hernandez was re-arrested shortly after he broke his leg during the escape, while Robledo remains at large. U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer says the Democrats and the White House are not close to reach an agreement over the coronavirus relief deal. The remarks follow the U.S. congressional leaders meeting with the White House representatives to discuss the pandemic aid bill. Schumer and the U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi held a 3-hour meeting with the Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. Schumer said the meeting was more productive than previous ones, but there are many issues yet to be resolved. Both the sides said the purpose of the meeting was to determine ways to pump more money into the U.S. economy to ease the coronavirus heavy toll. The pandemic has killed over 150,000 Americans and triggered the sharpest economic collapse since the Great Depression. Facebook has blocked all accounts of Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro's supporters involved in a fake news inquiry. This comes a day after the social networking website was fined for not complying with the Supreme Court judge's order to block these accounts. In a statement, Facebook said the order threatens the freedom of expression outside Brazil's jurisdiction. It said the company has agreed to the court's order of blocking the accounts. Earlier, Brazil's Supreme Court fined Facebook $0.4 million for failing to comply with the orders. Meanwhile, the social networking website said it will appeal against the court's decision. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. 18 people have been killed and 11 others wounded in a Boko Haram attack in north of Cameroon. Local media says the terrorists threw a grenade at a camp for displaced people in Mayo Moscota village. At a briefing, the district mayor said women and children were among the dead. He said there have been 20 incursions and attacks by the suspected militants over the past month. The decades-long violence has cost 30,000 lives and displaced millions in Cameroon, Niger and Chad. At least 6 people have been killed and 7 others are missing after heavy rains triggered a string of mudslides and flooding in South Korea. Officials say the suspension of train services and road closures are hindering rescue operations in Gyeonggi and North Chungcheong provinces. Seoul's weather agency has predicted more heavy rain in parts of the country for the next 2 days. More than 80 houses were flooded in Chungju city, forcing some 120 residents to evacuate. Evacuation alerts were also issued for nearly 5,000 residents of the county of Umsong. Floods have badly disrupted life in the Indian states of Bihar and Assam, worst hit by the monsoon rains. The deluge has affected at least 25 districts and displaced more than 2.75 million people. Downpour and floods have killed over 100 people in Assam since May. Meanwhile, floods have stranded over 2.4 million people in Bihar, while around 13,000 are staying in government shelters and makeshift tents. More than 2,500 villages have been swamped after the rise of water level in Brahmaputra River. Assam has received 15% more rainfall than a 50-year average, while Bihar has received 47% above its average. In the U.S., nearly 8,000 people in the Riverside County of Southern California have been evacuated as the wildfire spread across more than 4,000 acres. Fire department said the wildfire, named Apple Fire, was reported on Friday in the Cherry Valley, about 75 miles east of Los Angeles. The department said thick plumes of smoke filled the sky over the mountainous region. It said the residents of 2,586 homes, totaling around 7,800 people, had been told to evacuate. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection said the fire had grown from 700 acres to 4,125 acres and was 0% contained. Hurricane Isaias has weakened to a tropical storm after lashing the Bahamas. The fierce storm was projected to unleash up to 8 inches of rain on the Bahamas before directing at the U.S. But forecasters warn it can grow into a hurricane again overnight as it approaches the coronavirus-stricken eastern Florida state. U.S. National Hurricane Center said the Isaias has also slowed down from its 15 kilometers per hour speed. It said the storm is currently about 120 kilometers southeast of Fort Lauderdale. Two NASA astronauts are headed to Earth after a 2-month space voyage to the International Space Station. The trip marked NASA's first crewed mission after 9 years using SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft. Astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are on their 21-hour-long journey back to Earth. NASA and SpaceX said they are monitoring the crew's return from Houston, Texas, and California. If successful, a spacecraft will prove it can transport astronauts to and from space, a task SpaceX never tried before. Billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk's SpaceX became the first private company to send humans to orbit with the launch of Behnken and Hurley. Japan's stately traditional Kabuki theater has resumed its performances after a 5-month break due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The performances were made by actors and musicians in masks while maintaining social distancing. The seats were thoroughly disinfected beforehand and roped off to ensure adequate space. More in this report.
A rich blend of music, dance, mime, and spectacular staging and costuming, Kabuki has been a major theatrical form in Japan for 4 centuries. In the reopening of Tokyo's famed theater, fans were entering the venue wearing masks and going through temperature checks before finding their seats. Chiaki Sakurai, a 46-year-old resident, said she usually watches Kabuki 2 or 3 times a month.
I am so moved and I want to show my appreciation that they reopened the theatre despite many difficulties. There wasn't much to look forward to during the last 5 months, so I feel as if I finally come back to life.
On stage, the number of musicians were limited while wearing draped black cloth masks from nose to chest. The manager of the theatre, Yoshitaka Hashimoto, said the reopening depended on the situation of the virus.
If there are any requests from the Japanese or Tokyo government, we need to respond appropriately and think of a way to adapt the performance. Depending on the situation, this may unfortunately include having to stop partway through the run.
Meanwhile, performers stood further back on stage, keeping a greater distance than usual, and actors along the staff were also different from each other or shortened contact.
In the U.S. National Basketball Association, the Toronto Raptors beat the Los Angeles Lakers 107-92 at the arena near Orlando. Kyle Lowry's 33 points, 14 rebounds and 6 assists led the Raptors to victory as LeBron James' double-double failed to save the Lakers. James finished on 20 points and 10 rebounds. Raptors shot 42%, while the Lakers managed only 35%. The Raptors have defeated the Lakers for the 11th consecutive time. Porto have stunned Benfica 2-1 to win the Portuguese Cup final. Porto were down to 10 players when a pair of second-half headers by defender Mbemba drove them to victory. Luis Diaz was shown a red card shortly followed by his manager Sergio Conceição for protesting fouls. Porto centre-back Mbemba sealed the victory in the 58th minute, getting the ball past Benfica goalkeeper Odysseus and beating the rivals' offside trap. Carlos Vinicius breathed some life back into the Benfica with an 84th minute goal after a penalty was awarded to Porto substitute Diogo Leite. Benfica lost another chance for an equalizer as Jota was denied by the woodwork. Porto has completed the domestic double with its 17th cup trophy. In football, Arsenal beat Chelsea by 2-1 to win the FA Cup at London's Wembley Stadium. Chelsea's Christian Pulisic scored the first goal, but Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang struck twice to help Gunners lift the trophy. Pulisic put Chelsea in front when he scored the first goal of the game just after 5 minutes of the start. Aubameyang then scored through a penalty to level the match. He scored again in the second half to give Gunners the decisive lead. Chelsea were left with 10 men after Mateo Kovacic was sent off for 2 bookings. Arsenal have now won FA Cup for the 13th time. And now the weather situation from around the globe. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus Special.